All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to True Crime Loser. I hope you're doing well. So, today, as much as we can, we're going to go over the interrogation of Letecia Stauch. The video of the interrogation hasn't been released, and I don't know if it ever will, but I would love to watch it because it seems like it is one for the books. What we do have is last Thursday, Letecia's 32-page arrest affidavit leaked and was posted on Reddit and Facebook and all over the internet. And then I'm sure the next day the courts were thinking, well, since it's out there anyway, let's just officially release the thing. So they did, and it's out there, and I got around to reading it last night, and God almighty, son, does it paint a sad, heartbreaking scene for poor Gannon. And we're going to breeze really quickly through the gory, heartbreaking stuff and start right after when Letecia calls the police, starts concocting all of her stories and strategies to wiggle out of this whole thing. But it's looking, all the evidence and the whole 32-page arrest affidavit paints the picture that it looks like Letecia murdered Gannon in his bedroom on the 27th. There's blood everywhere in there, enough to soak through the carpet to the concrete below the carpet. If you want to read the whole thing, the affidavit's out there. But then she texts her daughter on the 27th, like, hey, can you go to the dollar store and get some cleaning supplies? Mainly carpet cleaner and baking soda and vinegar and all this stuff to clean blood. Her daughter does that. And so they think that Letecia is busy scrubbing down Gannon's room. And then Letecia's younger daughter comes home from school during that. Letecia meets her at the door. They can corroborate all of this. Meets her at the door, says, you got to go out and play. You got to go ride your bike or something. And which is horrifying to think about what Letecia was doing up in Gannon's room. And then her daughter gets home like, hi, Mom. And then so once Letecia got Gannon's bedroom to a point, that's when she calls the cops. And that's where we get Letecia's first story. So the cops get there on the 27th, and the story was that Gannon went to a friend's house and was supposed to be home an hour ago and wasn't home yet. So that's their story number one, right? And as you can imagine, the follow-up questions to that story were, okay, great. What was the friend's name? And Letecia was like, I don't know. And they were like, okay, well, where does the friend live? You said that you went and checked on him. Well, where was that? And Letecia was like, I don't know. And they were like, all right, well, what are the parents' names of the friend? And she's just like, yeah, nothing. They're like, okay, well, interesting. And then they were able to prove that she never went out to check, that she said she had gone to the friend's house to check, but they were easily able to figure that out. All right, so that's the night it happened on the 27th, story number one. So you can imagine after hearing that, she's the last one to see him. Her first story came up pathetically short, pretty much was incoherent and made no sense. She didn't have one follow-up piece of information to keep her first story going. Okay, so that was that night. The next day, on January 28th, as you can imagine, was insanely hectic. They're trying to get warrants for phone records and GPS and the whole 9 yards. They said Letecia that day was difficult at best. I think she talked to a detective or two on the phone, but didn't want anyone coming to her house. And like I said, was kind of not around that day. And so think about it. Just to reiterate, the 27th, by evening time, the cops are there hearing the first story about the friends that don't really exist. All of a sudden, it's the next day on the 28th. Like I said, that day had to have been hectic, trying to get everything, all the warrants and everything. And so I'm sure it went pretty quick. And then so the 29th, the day after that, at 10 a.m., Letecia is scheduled to come in for questioning. She agreed to do it. And so the night it happened, one quick, hectic day, and then boom, at 10 a.m., she's scheduled to come in. As the detectives, I like to put myself in the detective's shoes for these interrogations. So you got to think the detectives, I'm not sure what they knew about the room and the blood and the whole thing, but what they definitely knew is that her first story about going to the friends and not knowing the friends or the parents or, all of that, you're going to have some follow-up questions about that. So that she's scheduled to get in there at 10 a.m. She's 2 hours late. She gets there at noon with notes. She's got a big old thing of handwritten notes. And the detective or police officer writing up the arrest affidavit said, I've seen a lot of these interrogations and a lot of these interviews, and I would say that it's extremely rare for someone to show up with notes. And so they get her in there, and it says that she's referring to her notes and looking at her notes, and even at one point she goes, can I just read my notes? And I don't know what the detectives said to her at that point, but if I was the detective, I would have said, yes, definitely, read the whole thing. We'll just sit back. You read every note you got. We want to hear them, every single thing. Okay, so 2 hours late with notes, immediately was saying, all right, they're asking me these questions that make me feel uncomfortable. All right, so you got to think as the interrogators, is she going to stick with this friend story because we're going to destroy her? Well, she didn't. We get story number 2, which is that actually, even though I said Gannon had gone to a friend's house and didn't come back, and that whole thing the night of, that's not what happened. What really happened is that a Hispanic man raped me at gunpoint. And after he was done, then he took Gannon. And so as far as going from one story and then doing a good old-fashioned switcheroo, I don't know if we have seen a switcheroo this drastic. Going to a friend's house to being raped at gunpoint by a Hispanic man are wildly different. And also, going with the being raped at gunpoint by a Hispanic man second really makes zero sense because, okay, so she said the new story is that she was raped by a Hispanic man named Eduardo. And the first things that comes to mind is, well, when you called the cops initially on the 27th, you didn't mention Eduardo. You said that he went to a friend's house and then didn't come back. You would think that if there was a home invasion by a Hispanic man named Eduardo, you would have brought that up on day 1. And so you can imagine how awful that story came up short. And you can imagine that the follow-up questions probably did make her feel uncomfortable. And I'm sure the notes didn't help. And I'm assume that it started to go really bad. And it's like, okay, well, where did Eduardo come from? And she said that the day before, on the 26th, Gannon had either burned the carpet with a candle or spilled wax on the carpet with the candle. And in order to fix it, she got in her car. It was a Sunday. And she drove to a construction site in the neighborhood where Hispanic men were working on a house. Do they do that on Sundays? I don't know, maybe. So she drives to a construction site on Sunday, waves down a Hispanic man I don't know. Just, hey, I'm Letecia. I need help. Come over here. According to her, Eduardo came over and she said that, they got this carpet issue because of the candle and wanted to know if Eduardo could come over and fix it for her. And according to Letecia, Eduardo agreed. He said, yeah, I'll come over tomorrow. And without doing any background checks or really anything, she said she gave Eduardo the garage code right then and there. Just drove up to the construction site, flagged down a Hispanic male, brought him over, explained the carpet issue, asked if he could help. He agreed on the spot. She gave him the garage code. They planned that she was going to leave the next day in the afternoon and go shopping. And he was going to come over and fix the candle carpet issue, come into the place with no one there using the garage code that he was given and fix the issue. And then when Gannon and Letecia got home, Letecia said that Eduardo was in the basement. She was there. He was there. And he raped her at gunpoint. And then, if you remember, they can prove that the daughter came home, the one that didn't get the cleaning supplies, came home for a very quick and then left again. So she has to work that into this story. And so she says that, Eduardo's assaulting her at gunpoint, and then the daughter comes home. She goes upstairs, says, doesn't run, doesn't grab the daughter and sprint to the neighbors. She says, go out and play. Get out of here. Go ride your bike. Goes back down. And during this, and I'm sure she was just getting hammered with questions because, just listen to this story. And so as she's just feeling real uncomfortable, probably dying a miserable interrogation death. I can just imagine. And so she's in there probably just really, taking one. And so the daughter comes home and goes back, and I'm sure, like I said, she's just really struggling, and she gets into, I think any time that it started to get bad, she would say, I think I hit my head and blacked out at that point. Like 2 different times, she was like, yeah, and then he's assaulting me at gunpoint, and then the story's petering out a little bit, and she goes, okay, well, I think I must have hit my head and blacked out. And they're like, all right. And then the daughter comes home, and then daughter leaves. She goes back down, getting assaulted again, and then she, in a weird attempt to make Gannon the hero, I think thinking that, okay, if they buy this totally insane, incoherent story, if I put Gannon as the hero, everyone will be like, oh my God, Gannon tried to save you. Wow, that's the kind of guy he was. And maybe everyone will go that direction, and she'll be sitting there like, whew. And so she says that Gannon came down and jumped on Eduardo's back, trying to save her. He was able to throw Gannon off. And then I think at that point she hit her head again and blacked out again. And then according to her, when Eduardo was finished with her, he abducted Gannon. So, like I said, this story really falls pathetically flat when thinking of, well, if you were raped at gunpoint, home invasion style, you would have called the 911 probably immediately and not wait a number of hours. And also, once the cops were there, you might tell them about it, You might mention this Eduardo guy at some point. And then, so I think at this point, the interrogation is going horrible for Letecia. You can imagine. And they also, along with just the story being really stupid, they also with phone records and they have like a security system that shows when doors are opened and closed and everything. All of that does not corroborate her story at all of Eduardo. All of the basement doors opening, and she was on her phone the whole time she was saying was happening and texting about getting new headphones and the whole. Okay, so at a certain point during this interrogation, then she asked to leave, or she asked for a lawyer, and at least according to her, they denied her, and she wants to leave. And okay, once she says, all right, I want to leave, they say, okay, well, sit here. We're going to detain you. We're going to try to get a warrant for DNA and this whole thing. And at that point, she started shoving tissues down her pants, which I was like, why would she do that? Is she having a mental break? And then someone I saw in the YouTube comment says she probably got really nervous because she was just going down in flames, and she probably felt the energy of the detectives that they weren't buying any of this. And they're like, all right, yeah, we can be done, but we're detaining you and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And the nerves maybe just got too much and she peed herself. But so she's wants to go. They say, okay, well, we're going to detain you for X, Y, and Z. Then she starts stuffing tissues down her pants. And then she says that she has shortness of breath and I think there was another, chest pains and shortness of breath. They call in the paramedics. Paramedics are in there. They're asking her questions. She's answering with normal responses to all their questions. And then they put her in an ambulance, and she's unresponsive in the ambulance. There's something funny about that to me, that like she starts cramming tissues in her pants and is answering questions, and all of a sudden she's in that, and they're like, are you okay, Letecia? And she's just acting unresponsive. And then when she gets to the hospital, they said miraculously she seemed totally better, didn't have any life-threatening injury or things wrong with her, and signed herself out pretty quickly after, and then did her best to disappear and be hard to contact after that. Let me see if I got anything else. Also in the arrest affidavit is her Google history, which is just totally insane. And but I think that's all I got. I really hope that they release the video of it, because like I said, and maybe they'll have to, because she's claiming that they refused to give her a lawyer or whatever it is. But man, Letecia Stauch is one awful woman, and I can't believe the parents left Gannon just in her care. Just a true evil stepmother story. But anyway, I'm going to cut it off there. I hope you're doing well. I hope wherever you are, you're able to flatten the death curve of the coronavirus. I wish there wasn't a such thing as a death curve, but since there is, I hope yours is flattened. But anyway, I love you all. Stay safe, stay healthy. I'll see you next time. Why? Stavin' why.